Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Tackling Sport podcast. It's our live All-Ireland football final review of what was a win for Tyrone in the end over Mayo. Joining us, as always, I've got my brother Daniel. Daniel, how are you getting on?
Not too bad, Sean.
We've got John from the JMac podcast. John, how are you getting on?
Good, sir. Good. I'm very jealous of the Tyrone boys celebrating on Instagram. It looks like unbelievable crack. No better place to be with you, gents, discussing the game.
And also we've Aaron from GA Fan TV. Aaron, how are you getting on?
Yeah, I'm not doing too bad now. Great to be on, and I suppose I've seen all the Tyrone lads celebrating. I suppose at least in Dublin we kind of get that a lot of the time. I suppose John probably never going to get that in his lifetime, but I suppose for ourselves anyway, it's sure. It was nice to see Tyrone get the victory anyways.
And hold on, John. So I don't know about you lads, but us Dubs don't have the Tyrone lads on Instagram. So what are they getting up to?
Who wants to talk for? It looks like they're just in some pub in Oma and they're smoking cigars, sunglasses on. I don't know why they need sunglasses. I think it's raining down there at the minute, but it looks like unbelievable crack. They're going to get the week of it and fully deserve it because it was a great win on Saturday.
And we're gonna get into all of that, I suppose. Daniel, we to start with you, we all kind of predicted a Tyrone win, didn't we, at the end of the preview for the podcast, although we did really talk up Mayo's chances and how tight a game, I think a cagey game, how everyone described it, but just like in the semi-final, the Tyrone goals were the difference. Yeah,
it was amazing, and a lot of the analysis was, in fairness, going into the final, that Tyrone wouldn't get those goals again, like against Kerry, or they wouldn't get them at the right times, or they wouldn't be ruthless enough, but Jesus, when you keep doing it, then you've got to start asking yourself, are these lads just ready at the right time and to play the right ball? And the game hinged on a lot of factors, except that Tyrone were probably always going to win, I guess, because they just seem to bring a bit more of intensity to the game. They seem to almost want it more, even though that's kind of lazy analysis. But obviously the game turned on the Ryan O'Donoghue missed penalty, followed by Conor Myler's pass to Cathal McShane, which was just incredible stuff. And just on a side note, I remember Kerry trying to play the high ball against Dublin in the first 10 minutes in the replay, and the ball they hit into Paul Ganey was absolutely brutal. And there's just one high ball from Conor Myler that was so on the money from Cathal McShane, a very underrated pass. And I accept again that Rob Henley kind of got caught in no man's land, and Niall Morgan probably would have dealt with it a little bit better, but it was still an incredible ball that put him in that situation. So they're just so ruthless. And, the pass to McCurry for the second goal, it was just the right balls played at the right time. And you look at Mayo's goal chances and you just have to accept that they didn't play the right ball at the right time or pick the right option, which we'll get into a little bit more detail. But full credit to Tyrone. They fully deserved the win. They're the better team on the day, but also at the right moments, they took their chances. And they're just such a ruthless team, as ruthless as I've seen, anyone maybe except for the Dubs in the last few years.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned that important point about ruthlessness, and maybe that's something that was maybe like for Mayo's game. I'll go to you, John. You spoke there about the Tyrone celebrations. I mean, there was an element of me at full time watching the celebrations, forgetting, I suppose, how one of the big success stories in recent time has been Tyrone. Since the tournament, the Millennium, what they did under Mickey Hart, and then this year, that's so often so easy for people in all different sports to say, oh, we're in transition, the changing of the guard, but they just got out, did the job done, went about their business quietly, were always written, and people always seem to have a thing about Tyrone, that they always have this chip on their shoulder, but it's the way people talk down about them, and then they, as Niall Morgan said, they just go out and do it. They are a team, and that's their biggest strength.
Sean, that's the beauty of it. And look, I said that to Aaron earlier on. They came in completely under the cosh, and they were just done the work silently. No better men to steer a ship than Brian Dewar and Fergal Logan, and they just went about the business in a very quiet manner. I often hear a quote, quiet people win. Tyrone were quiet, and they're all Ireland champions, and they're full credit for their victory. Absolutely the best team in Ireland this year by a country mile. All the talk this year was about Kerry, Dublin, Mayo. Will they get to the top table again? Okay, fair enough. Did they get to the last four? Dublin's domination ended. Kerry throughout the championship were probably not too bad. And then obviously Mayo's obviously massive win against Dublin in the semi-final where are Tyrone, just up in Garvaghey there, training centre, training away, going about their business in a quiet manner, and look what happened. It's a serious achievement by them, men. It was a very tough year for them with the COVID, everything that went with it. And even Sean, look, their journey to the All-Ireland final this year as well. Like they came, they bet ourselves, they bet Monaghan, they bet Donegal, they bet the Kingdom, and now they bet Mayo on Saturday. So it was a serious journey for them. And like, I really have to give them massive plaudits because they fought tooth and nail. We didn't even know Tyrone were going to fulfill the semi-final fixture up until a few days beforehand, or a couple of weeks beforehand. And even that in itself is serious going by Fergal Logan and Brian Dewar. The management team deserve huge credit for this. And the players were just absolutely immense, Sean. And I really just, like I was saying to Aaron earlier on, like you can't give them enough credit for what they've achieved because no one gave them a chance against Kerry. They were 50-50 going into that game on Saturday, and they won it comfortably. So they're not going anywhere too far. They're going to be around for a couple of years. Can they do back-to-back? That'll be the next question. I know the players won't worry about that at the minute, but they're not going anywhere, Sean, and it's a serious achievement by them on Saturday.
And Aaron, a number of their key players that we all highlighted on the show on last Thursday, a lot of them stepped up. Peter Hart, McCurry, now Morgan after a little tricky start early on. I mean, they're key players, and I was really touched by what Niall Morgan said, that someone in the week said, you've no superstars in your team, you've no one. You don't have a David Clifford or maybe a Conor Callahan. And Niall Morgan said their biggest strength was that they're a team, that they're a band of brothers. And it really showed, particularly in that quarter after half time where, the game swung on a knife edge, but eventually Tyrone came out on top, Aaron.
Yeah, and I think maybe what a lot of people were kind of saying when there's no stars, like maybe there's no individual top player. Like when you think of Tyrone, maybe there's no player that comes off the top of your head. But I go back to a couple of years ago, Colin McShane was really leading the line there against Kerry in the semi-finals, 2019 semi-final. He had a brilliant game that day, but obviously Kerry got the better of Tyrone. And I suppose with Tyrone, it's kind of similar in some ways to the Limerick Hurlers. Like there's no one player that you think of off the top of your head. Like you could start listing them off, like whether it be Cathal McShane or Conor McKenna or Darren McCurry. Like they've just so much quality all across the pitch. And I think really since Fergal Logan and Brian Dewar have come in, they've just really just made little tweaks to the way that they play, different game plans at different stages in the game as well. Like if they need to shut up shop and go defensive, they will. If they need to start kicking long balls, which we've seen was very effective against Mayo, they'll do that as well. And they're always just improving as well. Like Darren McCurry looks like he's getting better. Kieran McGeary, Padraig Hampsey as well, kicking that point as well at the start of the first half. Outside of his right boot, probably one of the best points of the championship. And I didn't even know he could do that, to be perfectly honest. So with Tyrone, they just seem to be getting better and they seem to be surprising a lot of people. And as me and John were touching on earlier, their age profile is pretty good. Obviously Peter Hart is getting into his 30s, but other than that, Dara Canavan coming through as well. Paul Donaghy's in there. Lots of very good club players in Tyrone. Obviously done very well there at minor level as well. So, the future is bright for Tyrone, no doubt about it.
And they've had a bit of success at under 20 level in the last few years. Make sure if you're watching us on the live stream on Facebook, Periscope or YouTube, get your comments in and we'll read out some of them. And we'll see where you want to take this conversation. One point I am going to mention is, and we will get back to Tyrone, don't worry about that, anyone listening, but we have to touch on Mayo and maybe what was a little bit of a disappointing performance. And a lot's been said about it. And Joe Brolly, who writes a column in The Independent, he came out and probably the most critical anyone's been of this Mayo side over a number of years, and he continued it. He said it was embarrassing and enraging, even if it was inevitable. The shame is that with a high-performance culture based on merit, Mayo could be so much more than this. He said he got a text from Pat Gilroy on the final whistle. It said culture. That's in The Independent. I go to you, Dan, because we've talked about this before, and when we saw at the game in the All-Ireland semi-final against Dublin, when Aidan O'Shea came off, it was kind of this is the changing of the idea. James Horan is bringing a new approach to it. But Saturday kind of saw a few of their old problems rear its head again. And, in one way, Joe Brolly is incredibly harsh, but in another way, there could almost be a little bit of merit to what some of the points he's saying, even if he does go over the top.
Yeah, I just want to make an important point. The reason we're kind of talking about Joe Brolly and everyone's like, don't be giving him the airtime, but he does have a national column in the Sunday papers, and to kind of make some personal attacks on Aidan O'Shea and a few others, it's a sort of like trumping kind of like, you know, like building the base and then let the social media lads take care of themselves, and then they'll start doing the real abuse to Aidan O'Shea, do you know what I mean, on the social media side of things. So I think what Joe stands for in the Independent is pretty pathetic, to be honest with you. I also think the way he kind of decides to just have this attack on Mayo for the last 8 or 9 years, it's almost like he's waiting in the long grass for him to do this. And you'd swear the way he goes on that he won every single All-Ireland he ever played in, like, in all fairness. And I thought he had a few attacks on James Horan too. They were kind of the two he decided to pick out. He couldn't really pick on Killian O'Connor this year because he was injured. So I don't really like there are kind of some merits to what he's saying, and he's actually a great writer and he writes some good pieces, but I'd love to see his phone, because I doubt Pat Gilroy texted him that, and I know he's been caught out in the past lying about Michael Darren McCauley and stories and stuff like that. So the reason we wanted to bring up Joe Brolly is I think like, because it was the talk on the Jurors sideline Sunday morning, everyone's like, oh, Joe's spot on. Like, these are amateur players that are given a lot of work to, and I accept you can call someone out for a poor performance, but to kind of just like brush, you know, paint these Mayo players on the same brush that they're just not. They just can't do it on the big day. Like, there were mistakes made, and Aidan O'Shea didn't have a good game again like he did in the semi-final. But like, Tommy Conroy's there's a 2-on-1. Tommy Conroy's got a goal chance, right? And he shoots way too early. Now, if he pops or solos that ball, do you know who's waiting inside the square to score a simple goal? It's Aidan O'Shea. So, like, he scores that goal, they're a point or two up. It's a different game. So, like, I think people need to kind of be careful that they just kind of paint Aidan O'Shea as an automatic bottler. We're very like linear. It's either black and white. It's either Aidan O'Shea's really bad or he's a bottler. And some of the stuff written on social media is disgraceful from people that should know a lot better. And I accept that not everyone is saying that on social media. People are right to call out his performance, but I have seen some dreadful stuff. It is an amateur sport at the end of the day. Whatever about Premier League footballers, who are also human beings, but you know, there's some consolation that they're getting a few bob at the end of every week. GA players don't, and they have to play, like, these lads have to play club championship in 2 weeks. So I think Joe Brolly's kind of the leader of that, and I'm not a fan of it, to be honest with you, but I accept there may be one or two elements of truth in what was a very disappointing performance again from Mayo in an All-Ireland final.
Right, John, I'm going to go to you now. I don't know if you spend the whole podcast talking about the merits of what Joe Brolly's writing about, considering, you know, the success of Tyrone, and nothing should be taken away from that. But just maybe on the point of Brolly and what he's trying to get at with Mayo, I mean, did you see some of their old failings come out again, and just that inability to just quite get it done? And now it's happened in other sports before, teams getting to the final and they just can't get over that line. You know, sometimes the bridesmaid and Mayo currently, they just can't, can they?
No, Sean, they definitely can't. And I suppose, look, in relation to Joe Brolly's comments, and I was saying to Aaron earlier on, it's worked, because look, the three of us are talking about it here now, and you know what he's wrote in the Independent, it's an instant reaction, and look, he's the kind of fella who just loves the reaction, and he's got it. He's absolutely got it. And like I was saying it to Aaron earlier on, of course, like, you know, he was probably kicked out by RTE. He'd no work for the championship. Ayr obviously didn't have any rights for the championship, so he just wasn't there. So what does the Irish Independent do to get him on board? Paper doesn't refuse ink, and he writes what he wants because of his title, because of his followers, and he will get a reaction. People clicked into it. Daniel, you sent me the link there this morning for the article. We all had a good read of it. A lot of the below the belt kind of stuff. But as you were saying, Sean, you probably would kind of agree with maybe certain aspects of it. You know, it is kind of hard to feel sorry for Mayo, because look, we were saying off air, how many chances do you want to win in All Ireland? Saturday was an absolutely ideal chance. It's all going to be hard luck stories. It's going to be he didn't do this, Aidan O'Shea didn't do that, Tommy Connery should have got the goal, Ryan Donoghue should have scored the penalty. It's just all these failings. You're in an All Ireland final. You need to take every chance you get, and unfortunately, Mayo, I don't know, was it the 10th or 11th time of asking, just didn't get over the line in recent years. So I don't. It's so hard to feel any real sympathy, because you know it's past failings, it's past mishaps, everything that went with it. They just weren't good enough on Saturday, and I suppose I know Joe was a bit over the top with some of his comments. I think the headline obviously drew people in. As I was saying to you, Aaron, earlier on, Mayo fans, there's dozens and dozens and dozens of them. They're obviously not going to take that lightly. They'll get in contact with Joe. They'll be given out. But at the end of the day, Joe, he has that platform. The Independent have obviously gave him that platform to say whatever he likes. The Independent's going to be bought. People's going to buy it. Subscriptions are going to go up. So Mr. Brolly's laughing all the way to the bank, boys.
And I suppose, we've mentioned Brolly, but maybe your take on Mayo and why they just could not get over the line. And we did speak about, potentially could their backline be opened up, and specifically in that second half when they were kind of chasing the game. I think a lot of their problems did come back to haunt them, and there was that chance for Derek Canavan. He was forced a good save out of Henry, but that whole play and the build up to it just felt like Mayo were out of control, and they didn't have a grip on the game. Would you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, obviously when you were mentioning Joe Brolly there and his article, I suppose one of the points he made that I'd agree with was obviously about James Horn and some of his in-game decisions, like you were mentioning there, like Mayo's full back line getting opened up and taken off Padraig O'Hara. I just didn't really understand the reason behind it. Like I thought, it must be an injury at the time, or something must be wrong there. Maybe there was, and we just don't know that information. But it was a very strange one to take him off, because he was probably one of the best players on the pitch against the Dubs. Fair enough, in this game, I thought he was having a good game, but obviously Tyrone were getting a lot of joy, and Darren McCurry was obviously having a brilliant game. And yeah, like what Daniel said, I'd agree with his sort of view on the Joe Brolly incident, just kind of getting back to that. But in terms of Mayo, in general, it is just it's a mad story, to be perfectly honest, and I can't really get my head around the fact that it's been 11 finals they've lost now since 1951. To put things into perspective, if they had won probably half of those finals, they'd be third in the Roll of Honour for the most All-Ireland wins, more All-Irelands than Meath, for example, more All-Irelands than Cork. So it's a mad one, to be perfectly honest. And they've a lot of very, very good players, and they seem to do a lot right leading up to the finals, but it seems to be in the finals that they seem to struggle. And sliding doors moment, really, the Ryan O'Donoghue penalty hits the post, and it's a few minutes later, obviously, that long ball gets played in, and Colin McShane gets there ahead of Henley, puts it into the back of the net. So I feel from a Mayo point of view, it's such a tricky subject and a difficult one to speak about, because they aren't a million miles away, but at the same time, we could easily be all sat here next year discussing the same thing after they lose to Kerry in the final or something like that. And I think that's the sort of the bizarre situation that Mayo have found themselves in over the past couple of years.
The last thing on the Joe Brolly, he preaches that it's it's all a bit of fun kind of thing. That's his vibe, and we shouldn't take games too seriously. So I think he kind of completely contradicts himself when he's kind of doing those sort of personal attacks. But on the Mayo side of thing, it isn't. It's definitely playing on their minds 100%, because they had enough chances to beat Tyrone there. That's a fact. And they didn't get it done. And we were just waiting for the comeback, and it just never materialized. So the only thing I would say is it is a new team. Like Aidan O'Shea, Lee Keegan aside, there are a lot of young players that haven't lost that many All-Irelands. You'd find it hard to believe, judging by the performance there the last day. But like some Matty Ruan, who just had a shocker, an absolute my pick for man of the match. He just had one on, they did some job on him, So you'd have hopes that these sort of players will come back. I wouldn't rule out another Tills next year, but they're definitely not finished, but it's definitely playing on their minds.
Well, it just seems to be constant mistakes with Mayo in finals, missed opportunities. Conor Mortimer said about a year ago, you can't coach human error. O'Donoghue misses the penalty, Tommy Conroy misses a really good goal chance, and I think Aidan O'Shea even had a great chance for a goal as well in the first half. So you keep beating that drum of, oh yeah, geez, why didn't get over the line? Why did they do this? Tyrone took their chances. Colin McShane got the goal. Darren McCurry got the goal, because Tyrone were far more cuter up front, better ball players, and Mayo just scuffed their chances. And
just on that, the 3 goal chances you mentioned, John, Conor Loftus missed the worst of them all. Do you know what I mean? In the first half. So there you go. That's 4 gilt-edged goal chances. And if one of them goes in, it's a different ball game, 100%. But they didn't. And Tyrone took their chances with the better forwards.
And that's what Mayo did against Dublin. They took their chances. So I think some of their failings just maybe came back to haunt them. But we have to speak more on Tyrone, and we're going to do that now. We got a comment in here on YouTube from Matthew Hurley. Cork beat Tyrone in the under-20 with Canavan in that team. And look where the two counties are. This shows how well Tyrone have done in developing players and how mediocre Cork have done. Well-deserved win. And I think that's an interesting point, because you mentioned earlier there, John, about Garbahy, their centre of excellence in Tyrone. Tyrone have almost built on the success in the Mickey Hard years in the early and late 2000s, and they've kind of built on the success slowly and slowly at underage, and they've always been a constant and always been constant challengers in Ulster and in the All-Ireland series. But it just does feel now that they have everything in place that, oftentimes you can see, maybe we might see it in Kilkenny when Brian Cody does leave. Can the ship stay afloat? And it feels with Tyrone that almost everything is in place for this to happen, and that they've handpicked the two right men to lead Tyrone to the future. And you look at some of their players and the age profiles. There's a couple like Peter Hart and a few guys like that, Matty Donnelly, who've been around for a while, but there is that core group of players, that 25, 26, 27. Your Porrick, Hampseys, McNamee's, guys who've been, trending in the right direction now that they've won their All-Ireland. I mean, the sky could be the limit for them, John.
Yeah, but that's exactly it, because that's so important to look after your underage success. Like, I know ourselves we had 4 Ulster wins in a row, but a lot of players dropped off. In Tyrone, they seem to just keep these players, nourish these players, and give them chances. And I was saying to Aaron earlier on, you're bang on, Sean. To do the right men to take them forward. Fergal Logan and Brian Dewar, no better men to take them forward, because I think with Mickey Hart, they're just kind of playing that defensive football, not very enjoyable. Kyle Coney said to me a couple of months ago, there's going to be far more kick passing in Tyrone, far more enjoyable football. They're All-Ireland champions for this year because they played a lovely, lovely brand of football. They knew when to attack. They could defend when they needed to defend. They got the balance just absolutely bang on. They've looked after their underage system. Garvahi is an absolute masterclass up there. It's a centre of excellence. Look, the ship's been steadied, and hats off to Fergal Logan and Brian Dewar.
I think maybe, Aaron, just looking at what happened there on the weekend for Tyrone, it did feel like quite simple but very, very effective football, and you could often see that a couple of times with that kick out and the second goal, how just simple the football was in the kick from Niall Morgan, and how quickly Tyrone, when they do play, can move it, and that was always going to be a problem for Mayo. Could they live with that kind of pace and that transition and the link men coming from Tyrone coming at pace?
Yeah, and I suppose it's their ability to change their game plan as well. You seen with Niall Morgan, that was probably one of the first kicks where he hit that as long as it did, and you could tell that Mayo were just completely not set up for it whatsoever. Obviously it was Oisin Mullen who got caught there, and obviously it broke to Darren McCurry, and Robert Henley made the save. But yeah, I think for Tyrone in particular, and we've seen Kerry struggle with it as well, when they were breaking with pace and their ability to mix it up, like Noel Morgan, he can kick it to the wings and whatnot, but then you seen that kick out that fell to Brian Kennedy. He obviously offloads it onto Conor McKenna, who then picks out McCurry for the goal. So with Tyrone, they just seem to have this knack of being able to change it up. And I do think we're past the stage now in Gaelic football and probably in hurling as well, and all codes of GAA, where it's not just one, strategy or one way of playing that wins you in All-Ireland. I think the days of, playing a blanket defence and getting everyone behind the ball like Jim McGuinness are probably over. I think you need to mix the two together. You need to attack when you can. You need to defend as best you can as well. And I think for Tyrone, that's exactly what they did. And you were seeing what Mayo in the final quarter of the game, really they needed to do something different. They needed to change it up, and that definitely wasn't the case. So I suppose for Tyrone, their ability to change their game plan when needed, and definitely breaking with pace and kind of the I suppose the strength of their players as well, like McGeary and Hampsey. They definitely outworked Mayo in every way of the pitch, really, and that was one of the critical ways they won the game.
Daniel, was to me the outcome on Saturday and how it played out, there wasn't to me much that surprised me. I don't think there was anything that massively shocked me watching it. That the two semi-finals, if you like, were against the grain. Was there anything there watching it on the weekend that kind of surprised you or maybe caught your eye more than anything? Because it just felt like that game, to certainly me anyway, it always felt like it could play out like that, and that Tyrone would just be a little bit too cute, too clever, and Mayo would have those similar failings and just miss out again, not quite get up the steps of the Hogan stand once more, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, like I guess if Mayo take a couple of their chances, it's probably like the game we predicted, really tight, could go either way sort of thing. Not that it surprised me because I expected Tyrone to play a different way than they did against Kerry, but like they, started the game very man on man. They seem to always play. It's hard when watching on TV now. They seem to always have two up front, and the perfect example in the first half is when Niall Morgan intercepts a Mayo attack, and there's a 2-on-2 inside the full forward line. So that's a big change from the Mickey Hart days, where they, no matter what way or how defensive Tyrone got, they always seem to keep those two men up top. But they also went with that man on man. And to be honest with you, I was a bit worried. Like if Conor Loftus scores that goal, I think it would have been reflected in Mayo's dominance in that first few minutes. It just seemed got the first two scores, didn't they? And it seemed that they were slowly getting on top. And I was like, is this a bit too adventurous for Tyrone? But so you compare what they did with that man on man against Mayo versus what they did against Kerry when they pushed them down the two sidelines. It's almost like they prepared for the team they're playing against. And it's almost like Mayo and Kerry just played their normal game. So Mayo pushed up for the kick out based on the success Kerry got from the kickouts. And they won a couple, but the ones Tyrone won, that led to, I think I was reading an article today, led to 1-2 or 1-3, those long kickouts from Niall Morgan. And that was the difference, because if Tyrone win those kickouts, they're on the Mayo's 45. And the perfect example of that is the goal. One pass, Conor McKenna's in. Now, the hand pass he made to McCurry is sensational. It really is. Like, I didn't see that pass at all. So it just shows you that little bit of naivety that Mayo really wanted to push in the kickouts. Like, I guess if they had that game back, I think they would give Tyrone the kickouts as best they could, even retreat to the half-forward line. So there's no option for Niall Morgan other than to give it to the cornerbacks and then play the game on their terms, not too dissimilar to how Tyrone took on Kerry. But it just seemed this management team of Fergal Logan and Brian Dewar really, really prepare for the opposition. And they seem to adapt a lot better than Mayo and Kerry did. And I guess to some extent Dublin this year. So I was expecting something. I wasn't really sure how Tyrone would go about it, because I'm not an inter-county manager. I wouldn't know where to start when taking on Mayo. But they seemed to get a spot on that. They knew them if they keep going along with Niall Morgan's kickouts, despite how unsuccessful they were against Kerry, if they could just win one of those two breaks, it would lead to scores, and it won them the game 100%. So I think what I took out of it was what an incredible management team Fergal Logan and Brian Dewar are. And the scary thing for the rest of the country is they're only year one of maybe a 3-year project. So, they're only going to get better and better. So it's very interesting times from Tyrone, and they're pretty rootless up there. So say this focus will switch to winning the Sam Maguire next year.
Yeah, John, just on some of those points, one of the big areas that Dan and we spoke actually on this podcast, another podcast has said, is one of the biggest additions really in the last year or so for Mayo has been the new midfield they have of Ruan and Loftus. Now, John, they didn't really have their best game, if truth be told, and Tyrone kind of won that battle. Like, how did you see them two and their partnership, and did you find that was just another thing holding Mayo back? Just they didn't quite click as well as they did certainly in the second half and in extra time against the Dubs.
Yeah, well, look, I think judging on Saturday, we obviously see Matthew Ryan getting sent off, and just pure and utter frustration. And I just think the system that Tyrone had when Mayo were going forward, Tyrone were that well organised at the back. You could easily get frustrated at it because you just got back so quickly. It was just like a brick wall trying to get by it. Obviously, Matthew Ryan lashing out, I think, was Colin Kilpatrick or Brian Kennedy, whichever it was. Pure and utter frustration, and a game plan that just went out the window because Tyrone set up that well, and defensively it was just great to watch. And I suppose, look, that duo was very good all year. I know Conor Loftus, I think he had that great chance for the goal, but it just didn't really get that combination going. And in fairness, they really were cleaned out midfield. Like Colin Kilpatrick's catch it saying to you earlier, Aaron, for the goal was absolutely tremendous. Like he caught it from the skies and set up the goal, Darren McGuire's goal. So if you have to weigh it up, Tyrone definitely had the better midfield partnership on the day. I think Ruan would definitely be disappointed getting sent off. Conor Loftus was fairly, he wasn't really in the game at all. And I think even as I said, even when they did have any chance to run at Tyrone, it just wasn't happening for them. It really was not happening for them. And that just goes. It's full credit to Tyrone again, because they just set up that well. You couldn't get at them. You could just not get at them. And it's just unfortunate. It really is unfortunate because, it was a really good chance for Mayo to go up and shine in Croke Park, and it just didn't happen. And I know we were saying last week Matthew Ryan could be in for a massive game this weekend. Obviously last Thursday, it just didn't happen for him, unfortunately. And Connor Loftus as well. Yeah, it's disappointing for them chaps, because they had an absolutely tremendous year leading into that game.
That was Dan. Maturan was Dan's pick for man of the match. Mine.
Yeah, and he was favoured for football of the year going into the game as well. And he was getting back to, there's a lot of blue on odds checkers. So
there you go.
Then who backed it.
Aaron, mine was Peter Hart, and who had a brilliant game as well. But they did give it to Darren McCurry on RTE. Obviously got that crucial goal. I think he got 1-4. That just shows you how good he was. And again, he's one of these footballers that probably doesn't get the headline acts. And then as soon as you win an All Ireland, you get elevated to another place. And I think it certainly happened with Darren McCurry. But that performance was a memorable one in an All Ireland final, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he's one of them type of players. Like even in the Donegal game, you think back to that, he was brilliant that day. He just seems to have these moments of quality, especially like going down the right hand side and cutting back and hitting it with his left. Like he remind you even of Stephen O'Neill at different stages, the way he kind of plays the game, like really top class player. And to think as well, like I was even there earlier today, I was having a look back at the Tyrone team that played against the Dubs in 2018 and seeing what players were still playing, and there was actually a lot of players. There was 9 players still playing that were playing in the final, but Darren McCurry wasn't there. And it is kind of mad. Like he had to take himself away from the panel. He comes back into it, and he's been unbelievable. And especially under Brian Dooher and Fergal Logan in particular. Like when you think a lot of people probably looking at Cathal McShane or Conor McKenna or Matty Donnelly as the players to really kind of spearhead Tyrone's attack, McCurry's really been the man to take them to the next level, and he's been very accurate as well. Like he doesn't put many chances wide. Like he tends to take a lot of the opportunities he gets. So. I'm only sorry I didn't go with him for man of the match. I had a feeling it'd be one of the Tyrone forwards. I think I went with McKenna in the end, but I suppose McCurry was he was sensational. To be fair, I probably would have gone with Padraig Hampsey as man of the match in all honesty, but you can't really go against McCurry.
You could have really gone for any one of those couple of forwards, John. I suppose, John, we might look at then who we thought for player of the year now. It's a long way away and things, but you certainly have to take the last couple of performances from Tyrone's perspective and think that the key candidates come from there. I think on the Sunday game, if I'm not mistaken, they gave it to Kieran McGeary, and you've got people like Niall Sludden, Conor Myler in for contention. I mean, they're going to be looking around that Tyrone dressing room, kind of looking at each other, going, "It could be me, it could be you, it could be like an I'm a celebrity, it might be you."
Definitely. One thing before we go on, I think I tipped McCurry for man of the match last Thursday, didn't I?
We'll have to get the tape out. Yeah.
I think I did. I did. I'm not sure if anyone's won. I believe the thousands one. But yeah, no, look, regarding player of the year, it's so hard to know. Like you're looking at probably Conor Myler, Niall Morgan, and Sean, as you rightly said, it could be me, it could be you. But look, the Tyrone boys, I don't think they care about that tonight. They're having a great time and they're all Ireland champions. But look, player of the year, it's a real toss up. A lot of people are even saying Lee Keegan could be even with a shout for it, Porker, some of them boys. But look, it will be a Tyrone man, and there's a lot of candidates. Like I'm just looking at the programme from the last day. You've Conor Myler, Niall Sludden, like Ronan McNamee. He's had a great year so far. He had a great year as well. And Niall Morgan, poor Campsey, Michael Kerr. Jesus Christ, lads! I don't know. It's best luck whoever's picking it this year. There's a lot of candidates there. But if it's to go for myself, I don't know. With the Dazzler being contention, like it's so hard to know. It's so hard to know. I don't know what you lads think, but I just wouldn't like to be picking it. That'd be the best way to put it.
It's funny because it's the exact same in hurling as well with the Limerick hurlers. No one knows who's going to get hurler of the year. So, you'd feel a bit sorry for the GA up there trying to make this big decision, because there's so many players in contention. Like, and I was saying to John there earlier, like Cathal McShane might be the first player to win an All-Star without having started a game. And he could easily get in contention. So it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, just on the point, like the Dubs used to split the vote. I think Jim Gavin had a big thing that we're splitting the vote. So if a Mayo lad got nominated with 2 Dublin players, which happened in 16 and 17, the Dubs split the vote, and then you'd Lee Keegan, as far as my memory serves me right, won it in 16, and then Andy Moran won it in 17. And while they were both, I accept they're both brilliant, I think the Dubs were a bit short-changed, or at least the Dub fans were. I personally, I think Kieran McGeary will get it. I personally, if it was up to me, would go with Conor Myler, because I think the job he did on Paddy Clifford, and I think it's been forgotten a lot, because I think Paddy Clifford got into the Sunday game team of the year, and I saw a lot of things on Twitter, people not happy about that. I think people forget how good Paddy Clifford was in the Munster Championship, and we only have so many games to go off, in fairness to Kerry, outside the Tyrone game. But the job Conor Myler did on that deserves it. But I would not rule out McCurry, and I also wouldn't rule out Niall Morgan, because if he does get nominated, there'll be a bit of a clamour to get, because remember, 3 players are getting nominated. And then I guess it's up to the Tyrone boys to decide themselves who they want to win it. But Niall Morgan's been sensational, because, like I said, things didn't go right at times against Kerry, although I accept he had a really good game, but he unbelievable, a 9 out of 10 performance in that All-Ireland final.
But even just his kicking, like, I think that point, even from the halfway line, and even to set up the goal the other day as well, I think nearly on them 2 big moments, massive moments, mind you, because that the point against Kerry swung the game, and the setup for the goal obviously swung the final as well. If it's based on that kind of thing, I nearly would give Morgan it, but it's a tough one. But one thing I did see, the Sunday game team of the year, David Clifford was full forward. What was the verdict on that, lads? Or
I didn't watch it live, so I only watched the list. I was like, Clifford will probably get picked here, and he did. Outside the Tyrone game, he didn't play well, but then again, Paddy Clifford outside Munster Championship didn't play well. So where do you go with that? It's a very tough year. I wouldn't actually. I'm normally a massive hater on the Sunday game team of the year and all-star selections, but it's so hard with the knockout championship this year. I don't know what you think, Aaron, but to me, it's I wouldn't know where to start. Like, and people giving out Sean O'Shea wasn't involved. Like, I don't think he had outside the Munster Championship, I don't think he had a good game against Tyrone, although he played well, to be fair, with frees, but he only scored 1 from play, I think. So where do you go?
Yeah, it is an interesting one. I think with David Clifford, though, I do think he had a very good game against Tyrone. Like, in a game where a lot of Kerry forwards were struggling, like, he really did stand up. And like, in a lot of the games, like, it was only really against Cork that he probably didn't really get going. Like, he still scored a goal against Clare, got one against Tip as well. Done a very good job for the team. So, like, personally, I'd probably still have David Clifford in there. I think he's done good enough to get into the team of the year. But I suppose now that I think of it off the top of the head, you'd probably need to go back and look at everything, or look at the big picture, really. But you know, he's definitely in contention, anyways. Like, I do think, but there are so many players, like Ryan O'Donoghue, I think has to get in there, in my opinion, because I thought he was really, like, I thought he was very good actually against Tyrone. In the first half, he was like, he must have had possession, I don't know how many times. Second half struggled a little bit more, but I think that was more so got to do with the majority of the Mayo players struggling. But I think Ryan O'Donoghue would probably get in contention for Footballer of the Year as well, in my opinion.
And it's just it's like to come in Killian O'Connor's shadow, essentially, not just his position, but taking his frees. And I actually said to someone I was watching the game, I think he's going to miss this one into the Davin, because he'd nailed the ones into the hill, and I just had a bad feeling on his wrong side. But obviously that led to the penalty, which he then subsequently missed. So you don't really think of that. That's 2 absolute terrible misses he had in about 2 minutes. Poor lad. But I thought overall, considering the year without Killian O'Connor, he really stepped up, because no one else was stepping up to take those frees for Mayo.
Yeah, and like, just one last thing on that, like, it wasn't a bad penalty as well. Like, if that's a little bit to the left, if that's an inch to the left, it's the top corner, you know, and that would have been a brilliant penalty. So it's mad, like, you know, sometimes with Mayo, there's just you know, fine margins really that turn these finals.
And just like, Niall Morgan was so far off his line. Now, it's just a Gal thing. I knew it wasn't going to be given for a second, but it's very off-putting for a kicker. I accept he was doing a little dummy to get to the ball as well, which, you know, he probably shouldn't do considering the looseness of the GA rules. But yeah, that should have been retaken 100%, because Niall Morgan was closer to the large rectangle 13-metre line than he was to the goal line by the time it was kicked, I think. So.
Yeah, no, and we had that issue, didn't we, with Cluxon against Gainey a couple of years ago. John, I can confirm on my notes that you did have McCurry as your man of the match, and Tyrone wins. I hope you doubled it up somewhere there. And also, you can't forget Conor Myler had, you know, a brilliant season, but he was also the one who played the ball in for McShane's goal. So there's just another feather for his cap. Before I let you all go, I suppose, recapping on the season, we might do an all-star show in the coming weeks when it gets closer to the time for football and hurling. But I'm going to ask you for your memory, your favourite memory of the championship this year. And it could just, not just from the men's side or into the ladies' side or into hurling or camogie. What is your best memory of the GA Championship this year? And, you know, we've had some brilliant stories. Obviously, Meath winning the intermediate to then go and win the senior, and all that in the ladies' side, all the story, the Meath underage teams, then, you know, Tyrone getting to the summit, what Limerick have done. So start with you, John. I mean, what has been your best memory this year of the inter-county game across the different codes?
Oh God, that's a tough one. That is a tough one. We should have been preparing for this.
That's where you get the best stuff off the cuff.
God, moment of the year, memory of the year. Right, you aren't going to like this, ye three Dublin fanatics, but I just think, and just for what it meant, I think, look, I know they did get better on Saturday, but I just think Mayo getting over that mental block against Dublin. I know the scenes were mad after it. I know it was only a semi-final, but just that, the occasion and the way the game went, the extra time, the euphoria around the game, I just think Mayo's a victory against Dublin, I think, just shades it for me, because look, I know it was a shortened championship. Everything happened so quickly, but I just think it was monumental for Mayo. I know they didn't get the job done on Saturday, but I just think it was the moment that stood out. It's a pity, obviously, they didn't get over the line on Saturday, but that's life. It was a serious moment, I think, and I know it'll probably not live long in memory because they didn't get the job done in the final, but I just think for Mayo to finally get over the line against Dublin would probably stand out for me.
So John's gone with Mayo's win. Go to you, Aaron. What's yours?
Yeah, I was going to choose Cavan losing to Tyrone as my memory, but I don't know. We probably won't go with that one, anyways. Like, there's a lot of tough choices, really. Like the Meath ladies, even as a Dublin fan, like, you can't really look past that. I mean, to go from intermediate level, losing 2 finals, and then win the intermediate championship, then go up to senior level, and in your first season go and win the championship. I mean, it would almost be like Longford winning the All-Ireland at men's level. I mean, it's an extraordinary achievement, really, to go from where they came from, like a 40-point defeat to Cork, I think, 5 or 6 years ago, and then to go back to restructure back into intermediate level. Like, I think that's an extraordinary achievement. I think the Offaly under-20s as well, to be fair. Like, they had a brilliant year, like winning the Leinster and then going and winning the All-Ireland. So, and even Tyrone winning the All-Ireland, like first All-Ireland in 13 years. Like, there's so many underdog stories in the GAA this year, like, and you've got the Sligo Miners there winning a Connacht title as well, the Meath Miners winning the All-Ireland. So a lot of options to look from, but I would have to go with the Meath ladies winning the All-Ireland, because, to do what they've done, I think is just incredible, really.
Dan?
Yeah, Cavan getting relegated to Division 4 back where they belong. That's a personal highlight of mine. Mickey Graham saying they're prepping for the championship and then they lose to Tyrone. You couldn't write it, really. It's disgraceful carry on, honestly. No, it's so easy. Sorry, John. That was just for the Lord.
Aaron, you gave the best answer without saying Mayo's victory against Dublin. That was an unbelievable answer. Unbelievable.
Yeah. I've given them enough praise, to be honest, after the Dublin win. So, I don't know. Like, fair enough, a big win. It was brilliant, all the rest. But
can we do best moments from last year? Maybe Cavan went up.
You had your time, yeah. I mean, the tears fall from grace from Cavan in all seriousness, John. That's another podcast altogether. I'd be very interested in that, your opinions on that. I've actually got 6 things written down here, including the Cavan one, which was obviously a little bit in jest. The Meath ladies that Aaron covered, like, I don't think that's paralleled with anything that happens very rarely at club level, to be honest with you. And nearly the small bit of luck, the fact they didn't win those first 2 intermediate finals stood to them. They were almost like waiting in the long grass, and before everyone knew it, they were in an All-Ireland final. And the way they beat Cork in that semi-final, you forget they were 6 points down with literally 90 seconds. And 90 seconds in ladies football means 90 seconds, which is another topic. Offaly under-20s were incredible. Shout out to the Roscommon under-20s. They're doing a phenomenal job at underage too. The Meath Miners, incredible. That seems to be lost a small bit just because of the ladies almost. But great to see Meath back. And on that subject, the Dubs are beatable. Considering where we were at the start of the year, that outside Kerry, I couldn't see anyone beating the Dubs. It is good that Gaelic football almost seems back, I guess, in the sporting context. I did think it was good that Tyrone, with the COVID cases, meant Camogie got their first All-Ireland semi-finals as a double-header in Croke Park. I think that definitely needs to stay because it definitely grows the game. Camogie's got a bit of an issue at the moment. They've got Cork, Galway, Kilkenny contesting every All-Ireland since 2012, since the Wexford team. And Tipperary, for example, who played in that Camogie semi-final, it was their first game in Croke Park since 2006. So brings counties like Tipperary along if they get more experience in Croke Park. So I think there was a lot of good stuff that happened in this year because of COVID. And we speak a lot about Croke Park's overuse in the Ben side of things. I don't think it's used enough with Camogie in particular, considering that's under the GA umbrella. So whatever about the politics with the women's LGFA, Camogie should have their day on a Sunday or a Saturday before an All-Ireland semi-final or whatever as a double header. So tough one for me. I would still go for the Meath the ladies team because I think it was a phenomenal achievement considering it's just really been Cork and Dublin for years. And you've got a bit of a superstar in Emma Duggan. You've something to get behind. She's so young that there's almost there's another ceiling in that, similar to the Tyrone team. They're only year one, but just a last point on this, Sean, before we head, like, can you believe Tyrone are the 4th favourites to win next year's Sam Maguire? It's amazing. And Kerry and Dublin have about 70 to 80% of the market, possibly more if my maths are incorrect. And then Mayo are just ahead of Tyrone in the odds, which is very interesting to say the least. I don't know what the lads think before we go on who they think next year, but Kerry and Dublin are pretty much joint favs.
Aidan O'Shea was the favourite to get the man of the match the other day. Like on Boyles, like whoever, I was saying this to you earlier, Aaron, whoever is doing the GAA punditry for Boyle Sports must just be on the beer.
Dermot Connolly is the ambassador. I don't think he's doing the odds now.
Whoever's doing the odds, but Aidan O'Shea was miles behind that. Like Dazza McCurry was 16-1 to get man of the match. Like, I don't know. Aidan O'Shea, how he was favourite the other day, I do not know.
Yeah, maybe the people running the betting companies are secretly Tyrone men, and they're placing Tyrone down the pecking order so that they can make a bit of bob further on down the year. I mean, it is that I didn't know that. Like, that's quite baffling. Like, fair enough, Dublin and Kerry are 2 very good teams. I can understand maybe why you have them ahead of Tyrone, but like to have Mayo ahead of Tyrone, considering Tyrone just beat them, I mean, that's quite staggering, to be perfectly honest. Like, to be honest with you, if you were to break it down, it'd be Tyrone, Kerry, and then probably Dublin. I think personally that would be the tree. That would be the order I'd have it in, and then Mayo in 4th. Like, I think after winning the All Ireland, I think you have to give Tyrone their credit, and I think they should be favourites going in next year. Like, they beat Kerry, beat them really well, beat Mayo. Let's be honest, if they played the Dubs this year, they would have beaten them as well. So I think Tyrone, like, for me, they're the best team in the country, and they've proved it.
Yeah, I could see Dublin being nearly second in that, but like obviously, like Tyrone have a tough Ulster next year as well. Like, sure, Armagh, Derry's getting far stronger as well. Like, so to come through that first as well, like, so that'll not be easy. That's probably why they're 4th, but the Mayo can't be ahead of them, because I was saying to you earlier, Aaron, like Horn might step aside. There might be more retirement, so Mayo, I think they'll go down the pecking order a right bit, I reckon.
Yeah, and finally, just on, like, you look at counties like Donegal, Galway, Monaghan, even Meath and Kildare, depending who Kildare get as manager, there is that buzz back about the Sam Maguire. I'm really looking forward to seeing next year under a new format, whatever they go with. To be honest, I haven't a clue. I haven't even been reading up on it recently. But it's exciting now. And instead of dreading a championship, you're actually looking forward to it. Yeah. But Armagh 66-1, Sam Maguire, they're not a million miles away, and their time is coming. Rian O'Neill, who should get an All-Star, but probably didn't have enough games under his belt, so he was just getting going.
Colin O'Rourke said Rian O'Neill maybe in the full forward line position, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. I think the 2 O'Neills, I think there's a serious team in Armagh. I think Kieran McGee building something, and Kieran Donnelly there. And but there's so many storylines, because John Maughan and Tomás O'Shea Offaly, Mickey Hart allowed. You forget Mickey Hart, and you're the only one I heard say the Brian Cody thing, Sean, in the last week. It's an interesting point, but Cody, the Kilkenny lads are probably looking at Cody going, geez, if we can get Henry Shefflin in now alongside, I don't know, DJ Kerry as joint managers and try and do what Tyrone did. Who knows?
But there'd be no county manager that can go to a county board this year and say what happened while we're a team in transition. I think Tyrone have blown that out the water. But I think you are right, Dan. Before we finish, that next year's championship, you've still yet to see David Clifford and this young Kerry side winning All Ireland. Can the Dubs go again? Can they build another great side with maybe the likes of Johnny Cooper, James McCarthy, guys like that who've been, Michael Fitzsimon's been around for a while, maybe coming towards the end of their into county careers? And if we see any high profile Dublin retirements, or Desi Farrell is still the manager in charge next year, and you've also got Tyrone's quest to get out of Ulster and to win another All Ireland, and obviously there always is, can Mayo break the curse? But it's been a brilliant year of Gaelic football. We've had a lot of brilliant excitement, the semi-finals, and maybe this year it has taken over from excitement, or maybe taken over from the hurling. But that's brilliant from us. Remember that the guys, Dan and Aaron, went with Meath winning the ladies All Ireland as their memory of the year. Probably the only parallel in recent years maybe was Mullinachta winning the Leinster final a couple of years ago, and John went with Mayo beating Dublin as his memory of the year. So
that's a terrible take, John.
We won't be getting John on again, lads.
No. Yeah. It'll be Aaron and someone else we're looking for the All-Star show. So.
We'll definitely see the lads on again. That's brilliant. That's my thanks to John from the JMac podcast. Thanks for coming on again, John.
No worries, sir. Thanks very much. I had my own tonight.
And my thanks to Aaron from GA Fan TV.
Yeah, cheers very much, lads, for having me on.
And make sure to check those guys out. And of course, thanks to Daniel for joining me as always.
No worries.
And thanks to everyone for listening and for watching on the live stream and for getting your comments in over the last couple of nights as we previewed and reviewed the All-Ireland men's football final, where Tyrone, the virus, beat Mayo, the curse. That's from all of us here tonight. Get